Okay, we're going to look at some evidence for the particle theory. This is really interesting. We're going to be talking about something called Brownian motion, and there's a few videos and animations I'd like to show you, so hopefully we can get to that as well too. So this was first observed when people were looking at, well, let's do something silly, like take some pollen from a flower and put it on some water and take a look at what that looks like under a microscope. And this is what pollen actually looks like, and that's why it sticks to your clothes really, really easily. Look at all those little spiky points. These are tiny, tiny, tiny little particles. It's no wonder that when this stuff gets into people's noses, like me right now, that your nose can get itchy and you can sneeze and stuff like that. So that's why some people are allergic to pollen, and there's other things. But anyways, that's not even related to this particular experiment. So people who observe this kind of behavior, so they take a look, pretend like this little black dot right here is a piece of pollen that we're looking at under a microscope, and it's floating on water. And you see it, and it looks like it's moving around like this. Okay, maybe a little bit slower, but that will be pretty scary to me. If I saw something like that, I would think, oh my gosh, that thing is alive, it's moving around, and I would run and hide and everything like that. But in actuality, this apparent random motion like this makes it look like it's alive. So people who saw this in the beginning were like, that is very, very strange. But this guy, Robert Brown, that's what he looks like, Mr. Brown right here. We call this motion Brownian motion. This guy named it Brownian motion. We named it after him, Brownian motion. And he would spend lots of time drawing and tracing the paths of these actual particles, and it looks like, so he's trying to say, wait, maybe it's decided that over here, no, wait, it's changed its mind, it's going over here, blah, 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 and these paths just look totally crazy. You can't really predict what's actually happening. And so, what's the explanation? If they're not alive, they're not thinking, they're not moving around, what's the explanation for sudden change of direction and everything like that? And although he couldn't actually see this, he came up with the idea that maybe there are smaller particles that I cannot see that are actually smaller than the pollen particles. Maybe, I don't know, maybe air, maybe water is made up of particles as well, and those particles are actually bumping into it and causing it to change direction. So really, really interesting. Robert Brown called this apparent random motion Brownian motion. Why not? If I discovered it, I would call it Lian motion. It appeared that the pollen grains had a life of their own, but there's a better explanation for it. Okay, Brownian motion is what we actually called it. So if I look, here's a diagram demonstrating this. You can copy this down, or it can be on your handout. It might be provided for you already. The idea is that these smaller particles are bumping into the larger particles. These particles I can actually see. These particles I cannot see. So they're invisible to our eyes because they're too small for us to be able to see. But even if it's in the water, if this is pollen, and these might be water particles that are bumping into it. So pause and study this diagram a little bit. Let me jump over to an animation that you can take a look at. Okay, check out these animations over here. This is just from the Wikipedia entry on Brownian motion. If you type in Brownian motion, you can look at this. It's in a lot more detail, but these animations are really cool. They're demonstrating. Look at all these little particles. So this is the idea. This is the larger particle that we can see, like the pollen grain, or a dust particle, or a smoke particle. And the idea, it looks like, if you only look at the yellow dot, it looks like it's crawling around there. But actually, these other particles, air particles or water particles, are actually bumping into it. There's other animations you can see where you can actually control the speed or change the temperature. It's really neat. But down here, you can see they're moving a lot faster. Okay, the idea that these little yellow dots, if you can see them and follow them around, are moving around. So this is the idea, Brownian motion. And it's an important part of particle theory and understanding that everything around us is made up of particles, including the stuff that seems invisible, like the air that we're actually breathing. If you shine a flashlight and take a look in front of the flashlight, you can see all these hairs, tiny hairs or dust particles that are flowing through the air that I can't normally see, but they seem to be moving in a random way. And this is the explanation, is that there are probably these smaller particles that are air particles that are bumping into it. And moving them all around. So really, really cool stuff. Post any questions that you have. That's Brownian motion. If you find a nice link on YouTube, share that with us as well too, or any kind of neat websites with animations to help us understand this better. All right.